Hello, welcome back to IAH 241E, the creative process. So today what we're going to talk about is what Tina Seelig calls the innovation engine. So you are going to stop right here and go down below and watch the video that I've posted. It's a TED Talk with Tina, and she's talking about what she calls the innovation engine. And she goes through the process of how to be innovative, how to push people to innovate, and how to look at things differently in order to create and to discover new ideas. If you look at the image on the screen, this is the different parts of the innovative engine. So if you look at the outer three things, they are culture, habitat, and resources. So these are things that we don't necessarily have control over. So the inside part of the triangle, attitude, imagination, and knowledge, are things that we have a lot more control over. And if you take another look, you'll see that the items are paired together. So the culture that you live in often has a strong effect on the attitude that you have. Again, the resources that you have often will be a direct reflection of the knowledge that you have. And then the habitat that you live in has a lot of influence on your imagination. So for instance, as college students, you have the resources that are going to help you grow your knowledge. The habitat that you live in will have an effect on your imagination. And oftentimes the culture that we're born into, or the culture that we choose to live in, has a huge effect on our attitude. So in the video, she talked a lot about the 6 characteristics of truly creative people. Framing and reframing problems, which we've talked about a little bit in the past videos. Looking at things from a different perspective. Connecting and combining 2 unrelated objects or ideas. Challenging assumptions. Paying attention to the world around you, and then not being a puzzle builder, but being rather a quilt maker. So the 2 that I want to talk to you about briefly right now are challenging assumptions is the first one. So in chapter 10 of The Creative Habit that we're reading, the chapter is all about ruts and grooves. So a rut is a time when you are not really making forward progress in a creative sense. You might be making forward progress in that you are actually moving the projects you're working on forward because you know you have to, but you might not be personally growing in your creativity. So in chapter 10 of the book, she does talk about one way to move forward by challenging our assumptions. First thing, you have to identify the concept that sort of isn't working for you. The second thing would be to go ahead and write down your assumptions about that concept. Third thing would be to go ahead and challenge those assumptions. We gain knowledge and we think that that will work for us, but when you change the situation, sometimes the what we know to have worked, maybe it won't work in this other situation. And then act on the challenge. For example, my design tends to be really painterly, and I have a tendency to be a little more literal than maybe I need to be sometimes. So that is my working knowledge, how I've worked and how I've learned to do set design. So recently I was working on a project where I was working with a really amazing projectionist. And that's something that I haven't done a lot of in my career. And so my initial approach to the design was to be very literal, to have physical lights and physical scenery for each different scene. And there were a lot of different locations in this particular play. And it really wasn't working. It wasn't working for the team, and it was creating a lot of extra work for other people. So I challenged that assumption, and that the audience needs those physical elements really to help them identify the location that we're at. I challenged that, and I decided to look at it more collaboratively with that projectionist, so that I was providing surfaces for the projectionist to help establish for the audience the location that we were at. And so after I challenged my assumption, and then I needed to act on that. So I removed a lot of the physical elements of that design, and I provided that projection artist with more surfaces in sort of a more of a neutral environment for her to project a lot of those clues and indicators that the design team gives the audience throughout the play. And that collaborative work and that challenging my previous assumptions helps the play move forward in a more cohesive way, and also in, honestly, a less expensive way, because we're not using so many of, not having to find so many of the different items for each location. So that's an example of challenging our assumptions. We learn to work in one manner, and the world is continuing to change around us, and oftentimes we have to really look at those assumptions and see if maybe there's a better way. In the medical field, there are always challenging assumptions as science continues to grow and develop. Things are going to change, and the approaches that doctors are going to use are constantly changing. The other one that I would like for us to take a little bit of a closer look at right now is paying attention to the world around you, which sounds so incredibly obvious, but we often go through our lives and we don't really take in the world around us. Once I was working with this amazing other scenic artist named Linda, and we were painting this huge backdrop, and it was all a lot of foliage, a lot of trees, plants, background, that kind of thing. And we both had our ideas about how to approach the process and how to move forward with that painting. And at dinner time, we both went our separate ways, and at this particular place, we were coming back that evening 2 hours later. Well, we both came back to the project with a renewed sense of what foliage actually looks like. We had both gone, and I had driven to the nearby town, and she'd taken a little walk, and we both observed the world around us, observed all this different foliage, different trees, how the light hit the trees, how the light hit the branches, the different colors of foliage. If you go out and look, you'll see that there are innumerable amounts of green, different shades and tones and different green colors in our world. And so we were able to take this collective knowledge that we'd gone just by observing and applying that to the project that we were not necessarily agreeing on before that. So for reflection part 1 this week, what I want you to do is I want you to think about that innovation engine, and I want you to think about which part of this has more effect on your life. Is it the resources that you have? Do different forms of knowledge have a lot of effect on what you are going to do for your future, what you're going to move into? Or maybe is it cultural and different attitudes? If you're going into a teaching degree, perhaps it's the cultural and the attitudes that are going to have a lot of effect on how you move forward in your career. The next thing that I want you to reflect on is how culture affects your attitude, how your habitat affects your imagination, and how have resources affected your knowledge? Has that changed as you came to college, where the resources maybe opened up for you a little bit more? So go ahead and enter all of that information into the quiz for the week. And then due on Sunday at 10 p.m., you're going to go ahead and do quiz number 6. You're going to read chapters 10 through 12 in the book. Complete the critical response essay for the woodsman. There is going to be another video about that essay that you need to write. And you need to participate in discussion post number 6.